All right, we'll get the meeting started. And John, if you could do a roll call for us, please.
Thank you, board members. We appear to have everyone in attendance with Ms. Harpster, and she often has a conflict with the Thursday meeting, so I do welcome you today.
All right, and it looks, moving on to approval of minutes, looks as though we don't have any prior meeting minutes to approve, so we'll go ahead and just move right on into new business, item 3.1.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. This is a review of the proposed changes to the design of the new crosswalk overhead structures and their support posts as part of the downtown streetscape improvement project in the BID number 1. We have given you some background on the streetscape improvements themselves. And if you recall, on September 28, 2017, Jim Kowach, our City Public Works Director, provided an update and a PowerPoint illustrating the Downtown Streetscape Improvement Project. And under the project, the 3 existing crosswalk structures would be removed and replaced with 3 new crosswalk structures, roughly in the area of Campbell Plaza, the Phillips Plaza, Spillman Plaza, and an area in the mid-block between Ash and Elm Street. And this was intended to unify the streetscape improvements themselves. This shows a detailed drawing of those. They would be made up of quarter-inch anodized aluminum panels, which would be laser cut for these designs in the center. They would be of varying heights and would be spread across the 4 support posts, as well as having closures on the end of other textured panels. This would also be illuminated in the evening time with either backlit or front-lit lighting. And this is a close-up of the structures themselves. This shows the various patterns on those. The design scheme for this was to direct the eye or the traveler into the nearby plaza areas by going from a dense pattern or more intricate pattern to a more open pattern. This one is shown in the area of Phillips Plaza. And these would be supported by concrete support posts. Originally, the proposal was to have steel posts on the inside of supports with a concrete structure of precast concrete texturized, that going over the casings themselves, and that is what the exterior materials were. And on the May 1st, 2018, staff and a design consultant provided an update to the Downtown Streetscape Improved to the City Commission, and the results included an online public survey regarding the streetscape improvements and the pedestrian crosswalk areas. The survey itself gave various options concerning the preferred replacement of the existing overhead structures with similar structures, also the preferred replacement of the existing overhead structures with more decorative structures. A third option was preferred the modification and updating the existing overhead structures, and as a fourth, there was a group that said it felt it was not necessary to replace the existing overhead structures. Based on this, the overhead structures, which are 4 mid-block crosswalks, were included in the final design and construction bid. The survey results themselves show that 76% of those responding were in favor of either updating or replacing the existing structures. The City Commission met on October 8, 2018 to consider change order number 3, which was to reduce the crosswalk overhead structure costs. And at the end of the discussion, the city authorized the city manager to sign change order number 3 to reduce the crosswalk overhead structures subject to the review and approval of the Design Review Board. This change order conditionally approved the components for the crosswalk overhead structures. The changes are as I described, that the support posts themselves is going to go to a solid concrete panel. This would still have a sculpted top and would resemble the originals in appearance on both ends. The second alternate was to go with a reduction of the number and types of aluminum panels by eliminating the most intricate and expensive panel systems. And the design consultant, HDR, did respond that the use of a redesigned look and panel layout, which would utilize 3 panel types instead of 4, and he felt that the aesthetic look and intent of the pattern on the aluminum panels will not be lost in utilizing 3 panels versus the 4 panels. Based on this, staff does not believe the proposed cost-saving change order would substantially change the original design and appearance of the overhead structures or be noticeable to the average citizen. As a design review body for downtown projects, the City Commission referred this item to the Design Review Board to review the aesthetic aspects of the design change. The suggested findings in this place did note that the design guidelines for downtown Salina that the board operates under are only applicable to private property and private improvements in the downtown business improvement district. The guidelines themselves are not applicable to public spaces or the Santa Fe streetscape. However, the design and intent of the proposed streetscape improvements is to complement and enhance the predominant Art Deco appearance of the buildings on Santa Fe. The question that would be before the board is whether the 2 proposed changes on the support posts and the decorative panels would conflict with the Art Deco design theme in the downtown or otherwise detract from the appearance of the streetscape improvements or the appearance itself of downtown. Earlier this week on the 22nd, the City Commission did have further discussion on the crosswalk items of the streetscape improvement. We do have some city staff here today can comment on that, but what the Design Review Board is looking at is whether the design aspects itself of the individual patterns and crosswalks are compatible or would still be compatible with these design changes. So at this point, you would have several alternatives after public comment today to approve the 2 proposed design changes, to approve that subject to conditions. You could postpone this consideration if you feel you don't have enough information today. And then in the case of a denial, that would actually go to the City Commission for the final effort on that. And you do see staff recommending option number 1, but we do have members of the parties that are involved in the streetscape today in our audience, and I certainly want to comment. But at this point, we'd be glad to take any answers or questions from the board. And we do have additional slides on the panels themselves.
Thanks, John. Does anybody have any questions for John before we let the city staff, the engineers get up here and explain, or should we just let them get up here and explain? Okay. Dan, is that you? Sure. Okay.
Yeah, John did a good job explaining it. There are a few clarifications, I guess. The column design was, we just feel like the concrete column, it's cheaper and it's a better long-term design. So we liked that design, and it doesn't change the look from what we can tell at all. It's still the same color concrete. It has the same design to it. Instead of wrapping concrete panels around a steel column, it's just going to be a concrete column. So we feel like that was a fair, we thought, well, that's a great idea by the contractor and the designer thought, yeah, that's a really good idea. So we just had to work on how to connect that to the structure. So there were some design details that worked into that. But anyway, we thought that one was a really nice value engineering idea by the contractor that came back to us to try to help reduce the cost of these structures. So that, aside from that, then we looked at these panels. And so when you look at the panels, let's see, there was just 4 of the panels, and basically those panels are wrapped around the structure. So there's, I'm trying to remember how many square feet. There's a lot of square feet of panels, and there's A, B, C panel, and then they're in different. John, could you go to, just blow that up a little bit, and go to, I think, the bottom. I think it shows, the very bottom one shows like one of the structures. Just go to like one of the structures. There you go. There's Campbell Strands. There's just an example of, as you can see, kind of it's open on the ends. The more open panels are on the ends, and then they get more closed as you go towards the middle. So that's just an example of that's doing that with 3 different types of panels. If you had 4 different types of panels, then it would look similar. It would just get more tight, I guess, would be the idea. That was the idea. And so we felt like the B panel was still pretty tight, lots of cuts. You're taking an aluminum panel, you're cutting it a whole bunch, and that was fairly expensive. So that was why we thought, well, that could be something we could look at as a design change. So when Troy Henningsen, he was our HDR architect on this, and he put that together. He thought, from just looking at that, those look like pretty tight panels in the middle. Those are the B panels, but they're still pretty tight. There's not as much air passing through them. They're very precise cuts. So we felt like, well, that still looks like a pretty good difference between the middle and the ends. So John, could you go to since that's one of the actual structures that's there's Spillman. Spillman's probably the first one we're going to put up, actually. So that one is open on one end and it's on one end, and then it goes to more closed on the other. So the idea with that was the architect and meeting with the CAD committee, and when we worked through kind of showing where the plaza is. So it's basically trying to point you to the plaza. So now I can't remember if it's open at the plaza. It's open at the plaza. Is that how that works? The south elevation. So yeah, that makes sense. So it goes from closed on one side to more open on the plaza side. Whereas if you go to the other one, John, that's Spillman. Oh, there's Phillips. Okay, so Phillips goes the south elevation. You look at it from the south. It's closed on the left side, open on the right side. Well, the right side is where the plaza is. So that was the idea. So I'm just trying to explain kind of the intent behind the design and why we believe that the closed, open, the intent is still there. It just saves us quite a bit of cutting and money on the actual aluminum panels. So,
and these are the proposed panels.
they are.
Correct.
Yep, this is the proposed design that we have. Yes. So when we looked at that, I'm not quite as detail oriented as on this kind of stuff. I was like, well, it still looks the same to me, but there is some. If we had the A panels in there, you'd see a lot more black on one end, and it would get from more black to more open. It would just have more closed panels in there. So, well, the B panels look still pretty closed, so it seems like the intent is still there. But that's why we're back to you to talk about that. We can build the A panels. They're more expensive. It's a lot of cutting, but it can be done. It's just that was one of the. We were tasked with trying to save some money where we could, and that was just one of the spots we thought could possibly work. So yeah, we'll stand for questions.
Do we have a slide showing the old, this kind of detail, similar presentation with the old, so we can kind of look by them back to back?
Let me see. That's probably the best slide, but it doesn't quite do it justice because it's not on a white background. But those, there's the A panel. So if he blows up that right corner, or the left corner, sorry, John, that is kind of the top left there is the A panel. So when you look at that, it's just a really fine cut, and that's the best way to really explain it, I guess. And I think, well, here's a good way to look at that. We're actually going to keep that panel on the Campbell Plaza. So the Campbell Plaza, you guys know the Campbell Plaza stage. We're going to actually wrap panels around that as well. And so, but those are closer to you. You're going to be kind of sitting there looking at them. So we felt like that was a place where we didn't really want to economize on any cutting. We thought, well, let's keep the A panels there, and that was a recommendation from Troy as well. So we are going to have some A panels. They're just going to be closer to where where you're sitting, where you're hanging out more. Whereas when you're driving down the road, your perception is a little different. You're not looking at detail quite as much that way. So I feel like we could put those on the overhead structures. So. But we don't have probably a great picture of that, Gary, on that. That's about the best.
That gives me an idea, yeah.
Okay.
Can you describe a little bit the concrete? I think I read that it said it was going to have the same appearance as if the panels would have. So are there joints in it, or are they one singular panel that goes all the way up?
It's it would be one piece of concrete, so that you would not see the joints. That is a little bit of a change, because otherwise, if they're wrapping them with panels, then you'd see there'd be where the panels come together, you would see a joint. So that's something we'll probably still put in them if that's a desire. We could sure ask them about that. Right.
And John was talking earlier about some changes or something that was discussed at the commission meeting this last Monday. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, in light of the cost of the structures and us trying to find ways to value engineer, not just these parts of the project, but just find ways to, if we find some savings on different things, we try to bring those back to the commission or to the city manager for discussion. But this was the biggest change that we had with the 60 and the 60-some thousand, so $120,000 change. But in light of that discussion, the question came up at the last commission meeting on what do we really need for? Do we need 2 structures, or how many and where? So that was a question that came up at Monday's commission meeting. And so if we were to only do less structures than is currently in the bid, then that it may change some of these costs. So it may not be quite as of the same point. But at this point, we don't have any. We're still dealing with this. We try to get this resolved now, and then if we end up doing 2 structures, well, then we'd have concrete columns with B panels and B, C, and D panels. So that would still be the same thing if we wanted to go back to the A panels and just add $60,000 more or whatever that cutting cost would be to put those back in. But that hasn't been dealt with yet. We're still at 4 structures, but we're looking at the contractors trying to get us numbers to go to 2. And then that'll get decided at the city commission, we believe, on November 5th.
And then does that come back to us for approval?
I don't know. That's
Probably not. John?
We would not anticipate that, because what we're looking at today is the original change order and the design scheme itself.
more of the look of them, so whether you build 1, 4, 6, or 8, the look of them is what we're kind of here for, and how many we build or how many the commission wants to fund, they would be dealing with that more so than the look. You guys are dealing more with the look of them.
And if you were, just curious, to do 2 or 3, which, maybe this is thinking too far ahead, but which ones would you do?
Which block?
Yeah, which blocks would you do?
Yeah, I do not know how to answer that. It's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Just a thought.
It is, and that was a commission discussion Monday around 9:30 at night. So they brought it up then. We don't quite know if they just wanted them at the ends, as more gateways. So that was what we believe the consensus was. But then do the middle blocks feel like they're getting slighted? I mean, they could. So that's the end blocks have less. I mean, from what we've looked at, the end blocks have less of the architecture. The alley is going to be brand new. Mm-hmm. On the west side of the alley, you have like a parking garage. I can't remember what building that is, but it's the. Yeah. I don't know.
Used to be a parking garage.
It's a parking garage.
The lower level's parking. The upper levels are commercial.
Commercial, okay. And I was thinking it's like a county agency, and I can't remember what the name of it, but anyway, there isn't as much architecture in that block. So it's thinking, well, the middle blocks have the most architecture, Art Deco look. They are beautiful. So if you are wanting to leave them out of those two blocks, you definitely can see the buildings better. That's for sure. So the end blocks, at Spillman on the south block, you really have the bank on one side. So the bank is not an Art Deco looking structure to me. Maybe it is, but it's not one of the old building faces that maybe distracts you. You look at the structure more, you're not distracted you don't see the buildings as much there because you're looking at the structure. But the west side of the road is still pretty nice architecture, so I guess that maybe doesn't quite suffice. But the two end blocks is what we heard mostly Monday, but that hasn't been decided yet.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
I just got one question. I want to be clear. We're not eliminating all of the A panels, correct? We're leaving the A panels on the Campbell?
Campbell, Strand. At this point, it'd be the four on the street, not Campbell Plaza Campbell really has the stage, stage in Campbell Plaza, but then there's the structure that connects Campbell to Strand, so it goes across the street. So we're planning to eliminate the A's on all the ones that cross the road, but not in Campbell. Campbell
In
Plaza is
Campbell.
actually...
And that's where the A panels will
They would still
remain.
stay. They would stay there. And
So the other three will be identical, basically identical?
Well, see, when I say Campbell, I should say that. We're talking four structures over the road here. The really, a fifth structure is Campbell Plaza. That actually is its own structure, and that one is it's not going to be a new structure. It's going to be rehabbed. It's a little bit different story. They're going to rehab that structure, paint the bars, and then it's kind of a triangle. Do you have a good picture of that, John? Yeah, there he does. Good. Can you zoom in right there in the middle? Yeah, that's it. So you see that triangle right there in Campbell Plaza?
And that's the only place the A panels will be?
That's where the A panels are staying. So
Okay.
that's going to be lined, it's going to stay similar. That plaza or that stage is going to stay the same. That overhead structure there is going to be rehabbed, and which means trying to get rid of the rust and repainting it and making sure it's structurally sound. That one is going to happen there, which that was a discussion on the main blocks, at the beginning of this project, but it's a lot of work to do that, so we really picked just that one to rehab, and the rest of them are brand new. So the one that crosses the street there, that's the one we're proposing would not have A panels.
Not have the A's.
And there's three more just like that, to the north and two to the
On
south.
that one, the panels going B through D would direct you towards Campbell Plaza.
And that one's interesting because
Not
it's
towards Strand.
Campbell and Strand, so
Yeah.
it's going tighter to more open on both ends.
On
So it's
both.
on both ends. So it's because there's two plazas there. Whereas on the other blocks, it's only directing you one way or the other towards the open, which would be the plaza. So yeah, that's Campbell Strand. You can see it's closed in the middle. The B panels are more in the middle, and then the pattern gets more open as you move to each end because it's pointing you to both plazas in that case.
So what the effect you're looking for then is as you drive down Santa Fe, as you go under the structures, you look, the more open is directing you to a plaza on this
Correct.
end, this
Yeah,
end, and then
that's-
as you get down there, you go, okay, I got both.
Got two
Someone that's
plazas
maybe
here
not as
and
familiar
one
with
plaza,
downtown.
right. That's, hopefully we're all in this room, we're going to understand that. And that maybe take some education as we put these up or to tell people that, but that was the design intent.
Will these structures be allowed for decoration for, say, holiday events or the River Festival in collaboration with Salina Downtown Incorporated as well as Arts and Humanities?
It's a good question. These are going to be a lot prettier and they'll have colored lights on them. So the actual way these are lit is uplighting from the front. And the commission actually, we had an alternate for just normal lighting, and then the alternate was a little bit more for colored lighting. And so actually these will have, see there's just the normal picture of just lights, and it looks pretty good, but the color lighting option was something the commission thought would be kind of more of a wow factor and give us the option to do red and green during Christmas and that kind of thing. So they went with the colored lights. So we'll actually have colored lights on these that we'll be able to change in different seasons and whatever someone, the design or whatever somebody's mind can dream up for lighting, and it's going to be pretty neat lighting-wise. So then will we want to hang banners off that and put more lights on it? I don't know. I don't know if that, I mean, we'll have to see. The old ones we did that on, but I don't know if these are going to be cool enough. You may not want to do that, but they might, and we will have to just kind of see where that ends up.
I did notice that in one of the proposals that there were banner holders on either side of the pillars.
Pillars, okay.
Is that something that we're considering as part of this proposal, or is that something that would be contingent on the posts themselves? Or the columns, rather, I'm sorry, not posts.
I don't know. I do not believe. Jim, do you remember? We didn't have anything hanging off these posts. I don't believe.
Yeah, there was a
But you've seen a
frame that
picture of it?
had, yeah.
Let's
there's-
check it
they're
out.
like little red banners,
Yeah.
John.
There
I
was
don't know if you-
people that were on each side. It was like a black people
It was
looking.
I think it was an elevation.
Okay. Maybe an early concept from OH&H, maybe?
There you are.
There we
right
go,
there.
yeah, with those banners.
Okay, so that has, yeah, what is that? Let's just take a look, because that does, okay, here we go.
Hanging.
Small banner signs or hanging planters, yep. I think, so yeah, we will have at least some option for, right now on the plazas, they do have, the old structures had, signs that would point you to different directions, so that, yeah, those are gonna be, looks like, at least have some possibility for wayfinding signs. Thank you, Brad.
Does that sort of fit in with the new lighting on the streetscape? Seems like that lighting also has some banners on them.
On the poles?
You'd have an option.
Okay.
We put the snowflakes.
Oh, that's right, we did, yep. Yeah, we've put the snowflakes on those poles recently, that's right. And a little bit along those lines too, if you look in the planters, we've just planted trees this week. So the planters have trees in them now, and they have an outlet there, and that is the other idea that downtown SDI wanted with, instead of putting Christmas lights on these structures, which is what we used to do, we're going to have the option to actually put them in the trees and in the planter areas and some of the landscaping that's down there. So that's kind of an exciting thing, because instead of, we'll have lights with snowflakes, we'll have these colored lights, red and green during holiday time, and we could also have Christmas lights on the trees and in any of the bushes or whatever anybody wants to maintain and deal with. So it's an exciting possibility down there. So it might be just a really festive Christmas if we get a lot of lights. But in answer to your original question, Tyler, I think, yeah, it looks like we have amenity for some kind of sign or something on those poles or columns. Mike, do you want to expand a little bit on the original question? Okay.
If it's of interest or help at all in terms of the number and location question, good question, and as Dan indicated, I don't know that we have the answer just yet. Staff's going to have to support the city commission kind of working through that whole conversation. John mentioned kind of the survey work that was done. In addition to that, there is a development agreement between the city and Salina 2020 that has the streetscape plan attached to it and calls out the 4 locations. I've been in contact with Salina 2020. They're very receptive to a change if that's what the city wants to do. But they understandably indicated that they felt like, there was a community input process that led to the 4, so they wanted to make sure, well, they ultimately, I think, deferred to the city to sort it out, but thought that some additional community input process probably made sense for the decision on number and location. And then the other thing that staff's working on that'll all come together hopefully on November 5th is the bond sizing. And with Star Bond financing, we'll know more about the availability of Star Bond funding to fund the entire streetscape and those projects. So, if we're lucky enough to find out that we can maximize the Star Bond sizing, then we're essentially capturing the state sales tax increment to put towards these projects that may influence the city commission's decision on whether they want to go with 4 or 2. So a lot of discussion to be had in a very short amount of time here, but that's a long way of saying I don't know the answer to your question at the moment.
All right. Do we have any other comment from anybody? Yeah. Go ahead and come on up and just state your name.
My name's Russ Bergery. I don't know if it's come up before, but I think the most significant cost savings would be in zero structures. So that's my input.
Okay.
Is that it?
All right.
I've never done this before. so-
Yeah, if that's all you have to say, thank you. All right, then.
We don't decide that?
Well, yeah, I don't know that that's necessarily our decision to make today. I would definitely take your concerns and thoughts to the commission on that one. Sounds like they're going to be discussing number of structures on their November 5th meeting, which is not this Monday, but it's the coming meeting. So I believe today our goal is to approve the changes made to the former design of those structures. And I guess the only comment I have kind of regarding that is those concrete joints. If we, with the prior design, if there were joints between the different panels, bringing that back in some way with the new concrete by just insinuating that they're there, doing fake joints, basically, just to give the same appearance that they're panels. It's pretty easy, pretty cost-effective thing to do.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I mean, I think that they're going to make a form for them. There's, either going to be 16 of them or 8. So they're going to make a form for them all, and they're going to be pretty similar. So it would not be hard to replicate some joints in there. So we will make that request.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion with board, comments, concerns?
I agree on the panels, that without the joints, because when it first came to us, we had that, and that was part of the look of it, was the panel look, and that was one of my concerns too, is if we went with a solid concrete column, you'd lose that panel look, which to me kind of, that look on the columns matches the panels on the overhead. And then also I don't see that dropping one panel, one of the 4, really drastically changes the overall design of those overhead structures.
I appreciate the value engineering that the team has done on this to look at these 4 different panels and eliminate the most intricate one. So, thank you.
Any other discussion? No? Anybody have any other additional questions for either Dan, Mike, John? Okay, well, seeing no further comment or discussion, I would entertain a motion on this item.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the 2 design changes on the proposed crosswalk overhead structures with no additional.
Well, the conditions, the joints would probably be a condition.
Oh, yes, well, with the condition of the columns have the paneled appearance.
I'll second that.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve the designs as proposed with the condition that we mimic the paneled look from the prior designs. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, passes, how many of us are there? 7-0. All right, thanks, Dan.
Madam Chair, I'll apologize for being late.
Forgiven.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will move on then to administrative items, which looks like we have election of officers. John,
Yes,
how would you?
upon your request, generally our board September meeting is the annual meeting for the Design Review Board and other city boards, and the time for election of new officers for the upcoming year. We did neglect to do that during September, but we do want to correct that now. And we have given you a summary of the time served, that a chair or vice chair can only serve 2 consecutive full terms in the same position, and that Ms. Gillen and Ms. Harpster were elected as chairman and vice chairman respectively at the September 28, 2017 DRB meeting, and that was their initial year as in those offices. Ms. Gillum would be eligible to hold the office of chair. For an additional year, she would want to do that. She is eligible for that. Mr. Officer would be eligible for the position of vice chair. But looking at the other board members, we have 3 board members who would not be able to serve because they haven't met their 12 months on the board. That is a requirement for city boards. So the eligible members who can be elected to the office of chair or vice chair would be Maggie Gillum, Kerry Harpster, Thomas Heater, and Gary Martins. So at this point, we would be able to answer any questions, but we're taking motion from the board.
Okay, so do we just move to nominate someone? And then
Yes, that's appropriate. We'll proceed first with the nomination for chair for the coming year.
Okay. So at this time, I'll take nominations for chair.
I'll nominate Ms. Harpster.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Harpster, do you accept the nomination for chair?
Yes.
Okay, well, are there any other nominations? Nope. All right, we'll take a vote then. All those in favor as of moving Ms. Harpster to chair for the next 12 months, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Congratulations. And then we'll move on to nominations for vice chair. Do I have any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Mr. Thomas Heater.
Second.
I have a nomination and a second for Thomas Heater. Are there any other nominations? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, congratulations, Thomas. Okay then. So,
That does conclude the business that we have brought forward for today, and we appreciate you coming on relatively short notice for this application, but we are expecting to see the streetscape improvements move forward at a rather hectic clip. I know that you're seeing a lot of activity in the downtown, and we're really encouraged by that. So,
all right,
I will be missing the next meeting, so this is good.
okay. And have we set the next meeting date yet, John? Do we have anybody on the agenda yet?
we do have one tentative application, but they only have tomorrow to get the application into us. So if we did meet, it would be on November 8th, but we'll contact you well in advance of that meeting to let you know.
Okay. All right, seeing that we have no other business today, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Before we adjourn, go ahead.
We all move it.
We all move, and we all second.
Oh, wow. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, thanks, guys, and thank you, public.
Thank you for your work, Maggie. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your service, Maggie.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I'm still